Good morning and welcome to our session on challenges faced by local authorities to accelerate MMC and procurement barriers. I'm Jez Sweetland. I'm the project lead for the Bristol Housing Festival, and I'm joined this morning by my colleague Jacqueline Miller, who is the project lead for Bristol City Council on the Innovate UK project. The Innovate UK project is called Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth. And the commitment that we have across a collaboration of partners is to really look at how you address in the real world some of these barriers to accelerate the delivery and performance of MMC. And to give you a quick context of what we're practically doing, the project has three constituent parts. Those are around the demonstrators. So the Innovate UK funding was specifically looking at how do you create these demonstrators to get the right data to show the performance levels and the scale of MMC opportunities. And we're looking there across 9 different sites in Bristol, working with 9 different MMC suppliers from full volumetric to panelised, including some local SMEs. Those demonstrator builds then sit within a broader context. And this is the thing that we really want to sort of get into today, which is 2 elements of this. I think the first is around what we're calling the counselling, innovation and enabling model. How can we take those 9 demonstrator sites and really learn about how through the system, the governance, the procurement, the building, the institutional expertise, how can you really use those 9 projects to build that within Bristol City Council and then learn and disseminate that kind of knowledge building. And crucially, one of the things that we've identified actually through a piece of LGA research that predated the Innovate UK project was how do you interrogate that marketplace, this emerging pace marketplace, which is full of different suppliers, emerging suppliers, established suppliers. How do you start to create a toolkit, a digital toolkit that can help suppliers engage? So we're going to pick up a few of those themes as we go through these next sort of few minutes with you. I'm going to hand to Jacqueline Miller now, really just to talk about what some of the strategic drivers are as we engage in this project with Bristol City Council. Jacqueline.
Morning, Jez. Thank you. So for us, the motivator for doing this and in participating in the project is about the scale and pace needed to support the accelerated delivery of housing and affordable housing in the city, and importantly in the quantity that's needed. It's looking for the right mix of homes and tenure for the communities, developing those in a way that ensures that the communities are engaged and they participate in the shape and establishing those newer emerging communities. We're then looking at, the quality of those homes, ensuring that we're building good quality homes that are sustainable, zero or low carbon in terms of their environmental impact, and considering the wider issues around lifespan. So things like not installing gas boilers that might require retrofitting. And I think what we know is, we can do different things, but actually what's the impact? So the exciting thing about the project is understanding the impact and ensuring we're making a difference for the people that are going to live in those homes and those communities. Affordability, and things like post-occupancy, not just about affordable rent, but also about the operating costs of the new homes in terms of what utilities they use. And then wrapping all of that up and looking at leveraging the scale of the development in the city and Bristol's commitment to accelerating housing delivery for the benefit of the local economy. So looking at the jobs and skills that need to go with that and how we use our knowledge and expertise and experience to really drive change and become that centre of excellence in the city.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. I think it's worth saying there that one of the things that we're doing within Bristol is also then looking how you start to partner with the West of England Combined Authority and drive some of that industrial strategy to look at skills, inward investment, and the opportunity to really drive this sort of zero carbon agenda. Because, of course, when we look at how you transition house building into a more of a manufactured process, we recognise it's so critical that you've got that sort of aggregation of demand. And of course, that is one of the key challenges to enabling a transition to MMC. In the context of the project, what we have started to look at by bringing forward a number of sites, and we're talking here about sort of 430 homes. So it's a scale where you can start to really develop some learning and some input, is where are those problems? Where do we see the barriers strategically and structurally to MMC, and familiar with those? But I think in my mind's eye, I group them into 3 areas. The first is this innovation gap. there is a problem where you've got the necessary challenge of innovation, particularly for local authorities who are already stretched and strained, and now, of course, with COVID. How do you make space for innovation? And within the innovation, one of the things that we realized very early on was this problem of so many suppliers making all sorts of claims and promises and being able to kind of turn up as the sort of knight on shining armor for local authorities to say, here's your zero carbon quality housing at pace. But how can you understand that marketplace? How can you interrogate it? And it's emerging at pace. And so one of the outcomes of this particular project with the Innovate is working with YTKO and the suppliers and Bristol City Council to say, how can you create something, a digital optioneering process, which can rationalize some of the KPIs, can rationalize some of the performance data, can rationalize the strategic drivers for a local authority, and allow you to understand that marketplace within a context that you can interrogate it and make a business case. And how might that sort of interrogation then fit specifically into your ability to procure? So the constructing modern methods is one of the outcomes of this project that we think is about helping close that innovation gap. The other thing that we recognize is there is a policy gap. A lot of what the area that MMC is speaking into is aligning, of course, with Future Home Standard. It's aligning with the zero carbon agenda. It's aligning with a lot of the opportunity to change the way that we build and drive sustainability in our homes. And yet we know for a lot of local authorities, and this is the learning, this is the journey, there is still that gap between policy and delivery, in the same way that we see that performance gap in the way that homes are built. So what we hope to do is by using this council innovation enabling model is create governance and process and outcome-led decision-making that can align policy to delivery. And of course, in a way, MMC becomes an enabler of that. It's not about just MMC. It's about actually how do you take this ability to look at the broader outcomes and the broader objectives, strategic outcomes of a local authority, and where and how can MMC help deliver those? And of course, this is not a one size fits all. It's about that rigor of really driving that value for money piece. And there, I think you get into the real fundamental barrier here for how local authorities will engage in MMC. And this is the sort of the value for money economic case. We are still at the beginning, I think, of seeing modern methods of construction really become part of the mainstream supply chain of housing in the UK. And yet the way that a lot of our traditional thinking around value for money, the economic case, is still not yet able to really support MMC. And of course, there we have this data gap. And so some of what we're trying to do with the 9 pilot schemes in Bristol, working with YTKO, working with the suppliers, working with Bristol City Council social value policy, is start to see how you can make a case to understand the economic value benefit, longer term wisdom of MMC, and therefore that it sits within the sort of the governance structure and the decision-making processes of a local authority. So I think for me, what we're discovering is that you've got various cultural, various practical and various procedural challenges. And really that's about this innovation challenge. It's around this policy challenge, but crucially, it's also around the economic case. And I'm going to hand to Jacqueline just to share a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Jez. And the opportunity we get from this innovation, research and development funding is to understand a bit more about MMC in terms of how, as a local authority, we define and we specify for MMC. And, you know, the other side of it is around culture and practice. This is really different. If we're talking about development, we're usually looking at a whole different approach. Now we're looking at MMC as being a product, you know, and that's quite new in terms of development and on-site development. And I guess the other thing for us to understand is how we develop a pipeline so that we then start to understand supply and demand. And that then enables the supply chain that I'm really pleased to say that we've worked really closely with in terms of the partners under the project, to the extent that, you know, they've actually looked at some of their models and modified their approach or maybe their use of gas within their model. So we're really starting to shape the supply chain and what that looks like and how it can respond to our needs in the city and the wider kind of agenda around sustainability. And then, you know, ultimately that collaboration will start to drive down costs. So we can genuinely look at a site and think about what is the optimal solution. It's not just about, is it a traditional build, is it an MMC? MMC starts to become part of that decision making early on, and it's a viable option. And then, like you said, around the economic case, I think it's still very much, because there's not an established evidence base around MMC, we're starting to build an ability to demonstrate value for money, and how we define value for money, and what that evidence base is, and how we compare and contrast with what we know about other methods of construction. And then, really importantly, it's around understanding whole life costs and how we articulate the why, and why MMC is the right solution and system for a particular site and community. So that, I think, for me, you know, coming from my background and thinking about how we establish mechanisms to be able to consistently and efficiently procure and commission these solutions, ultimately leading back to our overarching corporate objective, which is to increase the scale and pace of affordable homes in the city.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. I think going back to those strategic drivers, one of the things that we have talked a lot about within the Bristol Housing Festival, partnering with the council, is there is a housing crisis, there is a sustainability emergency or a climate emergency, and there is a construction skills crisis here as well emerging in terms of the ability to attract and retain people in the construction industry. And how does MMC play into all of those three areas? And how does MMC start to provide a solution to those three areas? And of course, against that, you've got this problem that MMC raises different questions. It raises different sequencing of decision making. It has different challenges around warranties and legal frameworks. It provides problems in terms of how you procure within a market that you don't fully understand and can assess. And so what we know is that there are all of these problems that you have to take a broad part of the council on a journey, but that starts with strategic vision. It starts with the courage to commit to that journey. It starts with building a case, of a business case, about what your strategic priorities are, as Jacqueline said. And what we're discovering is that then you get the space to say that those innovation gaps aren't problems. They actually provide an opportunity to rethink and to restate what you're trying to do. And again, this is not with a blind's eye to saying this is all about MMC, but I think it's using the innovation, the change of sequencing, the change of process to say, how can we ensure that we're really delivering longer term value, the longer term decision making, using things like the Social Value Act to deliver that value for the city? And that's where we're at. So if you take a look at some of the projects that are coming forward under this Innovate UK project, you will see that there are a number of schemes that have now been built, and we're now doing that post-occupancy evaluation. We're looking at the lived experience, we're looking at the performance of the homes, and that then adds into the data that the Constructing Modern Methods, this digital tool, can then really share and disseminate with other local authorities wanting to go on that procurement journey, wanting to go on that decision-making journey. So I think we're at the beginning. I wouldn't want to overstate how far we are into this, but what we know is that there is a growing need to bring this data, and talking then with the West of England Combined Authority, an opportunity, I think, to share and build that data so that there is this ability to aggregate and drive demand and drive change. Any final comments from you, Jacqueline?
No, I'll just share that, you know, we've been on a fantastic journey. It's very exciting to be working with the MMC providers and colleagues such as BRE, you know, in really understanding what we can do with these solutions and how we can make a difference. So thank you, Jazz.
Well, thanks, Jacqueline. Obviously, this is a complex project. We have 14 different partners involved. We're working across different departments of the council, and we're really looking at these different three outcomes from the project. So we'd love for you to engage with us a little bit more. We'd love to share our learnings, and actually we'd love to know your own journeys, where you're at in this. So please do head over to the Constructing Modern Methods stand, where you'll be able to read up more about these projects and also engage with us and talk to us about what you've discovered, what you've learned, and what we're delivering through this project in Bristol. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to continuing to engage with you all in the coming months ahead. Many thanks.